I'd like to call the Finance, Ways, and Means Subcommittee to order for March 24th, 2021. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representatives Baum, Camper, Freeman, Gant, Hawk, Hazelwood, Lynn, Ogles, Todd, Whitson, Williams, Wendell, Chairman Hicks.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Members, any announcements or personal orders before we begin? Seeing none, we have a total of 46 bills on our calendar today, as well as an addendum calendar. So we are going to get started right away. Item number one, members, item number one on your calendar is House Bill 430 by Leader Lamberth. Sir, you are recognized. We have a motion and a second. Please continue with the brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is, in my humble opinion, a very, very good bill. I know that it has a fiscal note. That fiscal note is not in the current budget. So I think I know what will happen in this committee, but I would ask that because of the nature of this, it deals with facilitation of child rape, and I won't go into the background of this bill, but it is definitely a needed update in our code. I would ask that we could potentially consider this down the road for funding.
Thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 430? Seeing none, Leader, thank you very much for bringing this. As you've well said, it does have a cost. I do look forward to working with you and as we continue to try to get this one in the proper position. But without objection, House Bill 430 will go behind the budget. Item number two in your calendars, House Bill 606, also by Leader Lamberth. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this bill has...
We have motion and second. Please continue brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this bill has quite a significant fiscal note. It's $2.9 million. And I want you to think about that, and I understand it will go behind the budget today. But I've been contacted from families all over the state, and you have families in your districts that have had someone that has been killed by an intoxicated driver. And they have to go before the parole board, and they have to beg those folks to keep their family member's killer behind bars over and over and over again. The reason it's got a $2.9 million fiscal note is that these folks are getting out too early. I handled a case several years ago when I was a prosecutor where a young lady had been out partying all night, got drunk on alcohol and high on marijuana, and she hit a man at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning who was just headed to work. She hit him head on, crossed right over. Got 10 years at 30%. We showed up at the first parole hearing 16 months into her sentence. 16 months from the day she went into jail on a 10-year sentence, we went to the parole board and asked that they not let her out. Now, fortunately, they did not, but at the next parole hearing, they actually did. She served less than 3 years on a 10-year sentence at 30%. Until the day comes when we can totally rewrite our sentencing code and get truth in sentencing, these are the type of bills that will need to be carried from time to time to make vehicular homicide a 100% sentence. So with that, I've worked with Mothers Against Drunk Driving on this bill. I know it's a very significant fiscal note. I would just ask that you all hopefully consider this one for funding as we proceed through the process over the next few weeks.
All right. Thank you, Leader, very much. Representative Whitson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Real quick, I support this 100%. We had a police officer in Brentwood killed by a drunk driver at 6 a.m. in the morning. She'll probably be out real soon. I hope we can make this happen, Leader. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion on House Bill 606? Seeing none, Leader Lamberth, thank you again for bringing this piece of legislation. Again, a little bit of work to do on the fiscal note, but certainly look forward to working with you on this. So without objection, House Bill 606 will go behind the budget. Brings us to item number 3 on our calendar. Item number 3 is House Bill 742, also by Leader Lamberth. Sir, you're recognized with a motion and second. You are recognized for a brief description. It looks like before we get started on the description, there's an amendment filed for this bill, drafting code 005567. Is that correct? We have a motion and second on the amendment. We have a motion and second. You're recognized on the amendment.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And this has been a bill that has really been a work of multiple different agencies and businesses and individuals dealing with the shipping of wine and how that can be done. And so this amendment is a combined effort of all of those folks to make sure that our Tennessee wineries and even wineries outside the state can continue to ship. And in fact, they could even continue to use third-party vendors to handle some of that shipping, but they have to be regulated by the ABC. I'm proud to say that the fiscal note on this one does bring in at least a little bit of revenue for the state. Not a lot, but it does bring in some, and I'm getting a smile from the full committee chairman. It has a positive fiscal note. Yes. And so I will say for the record, I think, and I'm not going to ask that we fix it here, but if you were to be kind enough to proceed this from this committee to the next, there is a clerical error that left out the word farm winery in 2 sentences in this. And I, again, I know our speaker is not a fan of oral amendments in committee, so I'm not going to ask for that. But if you were to be kind enough to send it under the full committee, I would hope to bring an amendment that would just fix that clerical error. It literally was just an oversight. Those two words were left out.
All right, duly noted. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Question's been called. Any objection to calling the question? Seeing none, hearing none, we're now voting on Amendment 005567 on 5567 being put on to House Bill 742. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Back on House Bill 742 as amended. Members, any discussion on the bill as amended? Question's been called. Any objection to calling the question? Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 742, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 742 moves to full finance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1 out of 3 ain't bad.
Members, we're going to switch over right quick and go to item number 16. Item number 16 on your calendar is going to be House Bill 474 by Chairman White. We have a motion and a second. Sir, you're recognized for a brief description.
Thank you, Chairman, and I appreciate.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like, let me stop you. We have an amendment filed for this bill, drafting code 005530. Is that correct?
That is correct.
We have a motion and a second. You're recognized on the amendment.
Well, thank you very much. And the amendment, we just added a little bit to it. Can I go ahead and describe the bill, or you just the particular amendment?
Let's get the amendment on. Any discussion, or you want to describe the amendment?
Yeah, well, the amendment we're adding to the actual bill, I got this from our local DA's office, and what we're trying to do is they changed matched up in the original bill, a child that is 15 and older, if the act that we're trying to prevent here happens to them, then it's without their consent, then it is also the same Class E felony.
Okay, any discussion on the amendments? Seeing questions been called on the amendment, we're now voting on the amendment 005530 to House Bill 474. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on House Bill 474 as amended. Now you're recognized
Okay.
for it.
Now on the bill, by adding that amendment, this is one that I'm passionate about, as being someone who makes sure we need to watch over our children. And this actually happened as a case back home, and the DA's hands were kind of tied. If someone commits an act of indecent exposure for sexual gratification, the current law says if the child is 13 and younger. Well, this happened, but the child was 14. And so what we're doing in this bill is moving it up to 14, with or without consent. Now, if they're 15 and older, this is where the amendment comes in. If they're 15 and older and they do not give consent, it's the same penalty if an adult 18 and older commits one of these acts for against children, or either boys or girls. And that's the gist of the bill. We're increasing that. We're trying to make it where there's a lot of cases where this happens and our DAs and their hands are just tied, can't do anything. And this also if it's in a private home. And that was the issue they were having, whether, my opinion, whether it's a private home or a public place, children 15 and younger or any age really should not be exposed to this. And so we're just stiffening the law.
All right, thank you very much. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Chairlady Hazelwood.
Just a question. Everyone knows I'm not an attorney, but can someone under 18 legally give consent?
Well, that was my question also, but then the DA sent me that amendment yesterday where obviously that is an issue because of other statutes on the law where if they really couldn't say, I think, without consent on a 15-year-old because other things that are in the books. Okay. So I asked for this to be 16 and younger, but they couldn't go past 14.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion on House Bill 474 as amended. All right, seeing none. Mr. Sponsor, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this. Still a little bit of work to do. It does have a cost, and we will have to place it behind the budget, but do look forward to working with you to bring this forward. Without objection, House Bill 474 will go behind the budget.
Thank you very much, committee.
All right, members, that brings us back to item number 4. Item number 4 on your calendars, House Bill 679 by Chairman Carver. We do have a motion and a second. We'll let him get to the podium. You are recognized, sir, on a brief description of House Bill 679.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the BUI, boating under the influence. It basically just takes boating under the influence to the same degree in the law as it does driving under the influence. We felt this was necessary because of the accidents that we've been having on the lake and the people's been getting hurt and everything. And we have a small physical decrease in revenue out of the Wildlife Resource Fund, but we're hoping that we can move this on to the full committee and on out so we can get this on the floor to be voted on. Because it's a good bill and it's taken some action in the other chamber, and I'm just at the will of the committee, but I do renew my motion, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Any discussion on House Bill 679? Seeing none, hearing none. I thank you for your request, but we are going to have to put it does have a cost, and we are going to.
Does it cost your budget?
Does it cost my budget?
Yeah.
We put all these. It costs for that particular one, it's going to be
Wildlife
decreasing
resources, I
revenue
know.
for the wildlife resources. So
Okay.
we will have to place that behind the budget, but it is small, and we do look forward to working with you to shelter this on out. So
Thank
without objection, House Bill 742 goes behind the budget.
Thank you.
That was a really good try, I'll say. Yeah, House Bill 679. Let me do a correction to make sure. House Bill 679 does go behind the budget. Okay, item number 5 on our calendar is House Bill 216 by Chairman Curcio. Sir, you're recognized. You do have a motion to second. Please continue with the brief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Have I got a bill for you? Unfortunately, this the issue that this seeks to correct is a real issue, but I also know it has a very large fiscal note. So just briefly, we put a 6-month presumptive cap in the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, which I was a huge proponent of. Unfortunately, because we have no placements in the state of Tennessee, or very few placements in the state of Tennessee, we have our family and juvenile judges reporting to us that unfortunately they're having to hold children waiting for a placement, but then the magic clock runs out and they've got to let those children go, and they never received any therapy or any treatment. What we know from studies is that if you take a low-level offender, give them a high level of supervision, you actually make them worse. And so I fear that we are home-growing our own problem here in Tennessee by making these children worse than they were when we took them into custody to begin with. So with that, I do think this is a very worthy cause and bill. It does have a $6.6 million fiscal note in year 1 and 13.3 in subsequent years. But a lot of times in the Criminal Justice Committee, what we say is, you're probably not doing much unless you got a $13 million fiscal note. So thank you very much.
All right. House Bill 216, thank you for the description.
Thank you.
Any discussion on House Bill 216? All right, seeing none, as the sponsors already alluded to, it does have a cost, and so we will, without objection, have to place House Bill 216 behind the budget.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee.
Thank you. All right, item number 6 on your calendar. Item number 6 is House Bill 820 by Chairman Holzklop. You do have a motion to second. Please continue with a brief description.
I'm getting cleansed right now. House Bill 820 basically is an admin bill that has been brought to me by Secretary of State. And what they're trying to do is streamline the department and also reduce the fees charged for charitable events. And it's got a small note to it.
All right, thank you for that description and bringing that to light. However, you do have a funding letter, so
Yes.
members, are there any discussion for House Bill 820? Question's been called. Any objection called on the question? Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 820, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 820 moves to full finance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Your hair looks good today.
Thank you, sir. Item number 7 on our calendar is House Bill 534 by Chairman Howell. There he is. We'll give him just a second. Sir, you have a motion and a second, and you are recognized for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like some of my predecessors, this one has a small fiscal note, but it's for a worthy cause. This bill came to me from the School Safety Committee, and Bradley County's School Safety Committee is a part of the Bradley County Sheriff's Department, and like most counties, there are problems with juveniles making threats against schools and other students, and when it is a credible threat, they investigate everyone. When it is a credible threat, and they have a criteria for a credible threat, they can pick that juvenile up for questioning, but there is nothing in code currently in Tennessee that allows them to hold that child for overnight or for a few days for psychological evaluation to determine if he or she is truly a threat to themselves and to others. This puts it in code that gives the judge of the court the opportunity to hold them over to see if they are indeed a threat.
All right, thank you very much for that description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 534? Chairman Howell. Seeing none, it does have a fiscal note associated with this piece of legislation, and we will have to place it behind the budget, but thank you for bringing to light this
Thank you,
very,
Mr. Chairman.
very serious
Committee.
topic. So without objection, House Bill 534 will go behind the budget. Thank you. Members, we are now on item number 8. Item number 8 on our calendar is House Bill 1107. Without objection, there has been a request to roll that 1 week. So without objection, rolled 1 week. House Bill 1107. Item number 9 on your calendar. Item number 9 is House Bill 719. Also by there's the chairman. Also by Chairman Keesling. You have a motion and a second. Sir, you're recognized for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I may, to you and the committee, just a moment of personal privilege. I look over and I see Krista. And Krista, welcome back. I did not know that you were back in action here until today. So, but anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have an amendment traveling with this one, and its tracking code is 4473, Mr. Chairman. Is that correct?
It is, yep, already attached.
Okay,
Traveling
so
with it.
if I may, did we get a motion?
We got a motion and a second. You're
Okay.
ready for a description.
I'll proceed with just a brief description of the amendment. It directs all county government bodies to make provisions to ensure that at least one licensed ambulance service is available within their county, and 2, it establishes that counties that are not required to appropriate county revenues for an ambulance service. And you know, ambulance services are just not deemed essential services such as fire and police, and that's all we're trying to do here with this. So with that is the description of and with the amendment, and it makes the bill itself. So I'll entertain any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 719? Seeing none, hearing none, you ready to vote on moving House Bill 719 on to full finance? All right, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 719 moves to full finance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
We are now on item number 10. Item number 10 on our calendars, House Bill 235 by Chairman Littleton. Chair Lady, you are recognized. We have a motion to second. Please continue with the brief description.
Thank you, Chairman. This increases from $10,000 to $25,000 the threshold for which a local board of education or governing body of a public charter school must make purchases or expenditures by competitive bids. If an LEA chooses not to follow the local governing body's purchasing procedures, and it establishes that counties that have adopted the county financial management system of 1981, the county purchasing law of 1957, or that are similarly centralized for purchasing are deemed to have a full-time purchasing agent.
All right, I'm sorry.
The intent of and now that we're getting all the money for the education, that $4.2 billion, the intent of it now is to make sure that small businesses get a little piece of the pie with the bid-in. So.
All right, thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 235? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this bill. Are you saying that now if it's under $25,000, it does not have to have a competitive process?
You're recognized.
They do have to get 3 bids, but they can make phone calls. But they do have to get 3 bids, and it is transparent. It's all on record what they do.
Okay, I was curious about the
Yeah,
transparency of it. Okay,
Mhm.
so you
It is-
believe that there will be transparency, some accountability, that we can go back and have a record?
You're recognized.
It,
yes,
it has to be transparent, and they do have to get 3 bids.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Further discussion on House Bill 235? Seeing none, are you ready to vote on sending House Bill 235 on to full finance? All right, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 235 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
Item number 11 on our calendar has been requested to be rolled 1 week. So without objection, House Bill 768 rolled 1 week. All right, that brings us to item number 12. Item number 12 on our calendars, House Bill 183 by Chairman Ramsey. You have a motion and a second. Sir, you are recognized on a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. What this bill does is creates the Professional Art Therapist Advisory Committee. It'll be within the Board of Examiners of Psychology, and establishes the committee to consist of 3 members appointed by the governor. Authorizes the committee to issue licenses to qualified applicants and entitles members to travel and other appropriate expenses while engaged in committee business. Requires the Division of Health-related boards and the Department of Health to provide administrative support to the committee. You'll be pleased to see that it has a revenue increase of $15,000 the first year, with a possible decrease of or an expenditure of $1,300. So with pending further questions, would renew my motion.
All right, thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 183? Question's been called. Any objection, called the question. Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 183, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 183 moves to full finance.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, that brings us to item number 13, which has been requested to be rolled 2 weeks. So without objection, House Bill 226 rolled 2 weeks. Item number 14 on your calendar. Item number 14 is House Bill 442. But Chairman Vaughn, you have a motion and a second. Please continue with a brief description.
Thank you, sir. You're gonna have to bear with me. Trevor Joseph was 33 years old when he was killed in action. He was a constituent of mine. He was a helicopter pilot at Fort Polk. At the time of his death, he was the commander of the Cajun Dust-Off Medevac unit. He was deployed twice to Afghanistan, was awarded multiple honors, the Bronze Star Meritorious Service Medal, Air Medal with Valor in Combat, 2 Army Commendation Medals, the Army Achievement Medal, a parachutist badge, and so on and so on. A brave hero of our country. He was a constituent of mine. He was a graduate of Houston High School, a graduate of the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. When he died, his young wife requested that he be buried on the weekend at State Veterans Cemetery. The administration, and under current statute, has the ability to grant a waiver, but in this case, they did not do so. It was at that point in time, community members in my hometown volunteered to pay the difference in his burial costs. Again, we were told no, that there was no way that the bureaucratically designed system could accommodate such a request, even though it minimized leave time for soldiers, allowed friends from high school to travel into the community. And so we wound up, the family laid him to rest on a Tuesday afternoon. I think that's deplorable. I think it's awful. When I looked down here and I saw the fiscal note, it's approximately $500 or something. You know, I'm actually glad I got to come here, because if I don't get to present this on the House floor, his name needs to be said. So, with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's a combination of anger, embarrassment, and a sense of loss.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much for bringing this forward. Members, any discussion on House Bill 442? Seeing none, as you already said, when you look at this fiscal note, there is a $500 impact. But let me say this: in a second, this bill, without objection, is going to go behind the budget. But let me say this before we do that: if there has ever been a bill that I absolutely cannot wait to see to be brought forward here in just a little bit, so that you can come back and you can present this bill on the House floor, I cannot absolutely wait, sir. I just want to let you know that.
Thank you, sir.
So, any further discussion on House Bill 442? Due to the costs associated, it is going behind the budget, but we will see this again. I sure do hope
Thank
so.
you,
So
sir.
without objection, House Bill 442 goes behind the budget. Sir, Sir, you're recognized on item number 15, House Bill 781. Chairman
Yeah, I
Bond.
don't get as worked up about lie detectors and private eyes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have a motion and a second. Please continue with a brief description.
This is an administration bill which takes the boards and commissions for these services and combines them all into a commissioner-led program.
All right, you've heard the description. Any discussion on House Bill 781? Question's been called. Any objection? Calling the question. Seeing none, hearing none, we're now voting on House Bill 781, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 781 moves to full finance.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, we have already taken care of item number 16, so we are now on item number 17. Item number 17, without objection, members, you will remember, we are setting up a sports facilities calendar, and so we will go ahead and take care of this, and we're going to actually put this one on that, House Bill 1204 will go on that sports facility without objection. Sir, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. Have you set a date for that yet, for that calendar?
That date has tentatively been set for 2 weeks today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so without objection, House Bill 1204 moves to sports facilities calendar. Brings us to item number 18 on your calendar. Item number 18 is House Bill 150. Chairman, you do have a motion and a second. Please continue with the brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A brief description. Members, this bill is related to social hosting. Currently in statute, the term underage is used instead of minor. So currently, if you social host, there is only a penalty if those you social host are 18 to 21. There is actually no penalty for hosting high school students, which was my response as well, Representative Freeman. There is no penalty currently if you social host high school students. This happened in my district. I had a parent reach out to me. They researched this, and there was literally no steps that could be taken against the parents who social hosted these high school students and allowed them to leave their home in the middle of the night and drive after drinking. So this changes the term underage to minor, which covers everyone under 21. And it is a minimum of a Class A misdemeanor with a $1,000 fine and 100 hours of community service. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 150? Seeing none, there is a cost associated with this particular piece of legislation. Look forward to working with the sponsor. But due to that, without objection, House Bill 150 will go behind the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. You're
And
recognized.
Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized, I also have another bill in this committee, which is item number 2 on the addendum calendar, which is House Bill 1233. With your permission and the committee's permission, I'd like to roll that 2 weeks if I could.
All right, members, that's item number 46 on our addendum calendar. That's going to be House Bill 1233. You've heard the request, so without objection, House Bill 1233 roll 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
All right, that brings us to item number 19 on our calendar, House Bill 205 by Representative Cochran. Sir, you're recognized on House Bill 205. You do have a motion and a second, so please continue with a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill addresses what is a somewhat obscure type of utility district. Those are, there's very few of them in the state. They're utility districts that are owned by 2 or more counties. And essentially, this just allows them to pay their board members up to $300 a month. And basically, it just makes this section of code match the portion that addresses municipal utility districts. Municipal districts are the more common type. They're already allowed to pay this amount. So just kind of making things match. Probably there are so few of them, it was overlooked about 14 years ago when the other section of code was changed. But with that, there's a fiscal note, an increase in local expenditures, but no increase in state expenditures.
Thank you, Representative. And House Bill 205 is permissive, so we are at the will of the body as far as moving that forward today, if you'd so like. Question has been called on House Bill 205. Any objection to calling the question? Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on moving House Bill 205 to full finance. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 205 moves to full finance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Members, that brings us to item number 20, and sitting patiently in the back is Representative Sherrill, and that's House Bill 1230. Sir, you're recognized. You do have a motion to second. Please continue with a brief description.
This bill here tried to help some of our Tennessee residents that suffered with amputation of about 75% or more of the lower limb. That would give them a hunting and fishing license at a one-time fee of $10.
All right, thank you for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 1230? There is a small fiscal notice associated with House Bill 1230, but I certainly look forward to working with the sponsor to move this legislation forward at some point. So, any discussion on House Bill 1230? Seeing none, without objection, House Bill 1230 will be placed behind the budget.
Thank you, Chairman and members.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to item number 21. Item number 21 on our calendars, House Bill 57 by Representative Campbell. We have a motion and a second. Sir, you are recognized on House Bill 57 for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This authorizes the Tennessee Department of Transportation to install and erect signs along a state highway for the Doe Mountain Recreation Area. And the Doe Mountain Recreation Area in my home county is over 8,600 acres of wilderness that includes mountain terrain and trails perfect for side-by-sides and the like. Many people from many places are traveling in for this opportunity, and this specifically is regarding the signage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 57? Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as a member of the Doe Valley Sportsman Association, I certainly support this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. This may be at my ignorance, but why does this have to have legislative approval?
Representative Campbell.
Well, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but my understanding is the criteria by which the department operates, this particular type of signage for this particular state entity is not included in the way they currently do business. So in other words, I couldn't just call, I did speak with TDOT. They can't just erect the signs without this. It's my understanding.
Okay, thank you, sponsor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Hogg.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think I may be able to describe and go in a little more depth on that. I think you have to have a certain number of visitors, documented visitors over a period of time and be able to show that in order to have this signage placed. The Doe Mountain is unique in that you don't necessarily know who's coming and going, where you've got folks coming in from other states, other localities. So it's a little more difficult to gauge the number of individuals coming and going. So hence the need for legislation, because you really can't quantify the visitors on this beautiful site. So I think that's why we need the legislation, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on House Bill 57? Seeing none, Representative, there is a cost associated with this particular piece of legislation, but look forward to working with you to see if we can't maybe get this out behind the budget at some point. I'll note, since everyone's mentioned Doe River, I've come down that zip line over there at the gorge more than once, so it does have a little affection in my heart. So with that said, though, we will have to, without objection, place House Bill 57 behind the budget. Thank you, sir. Members, item number 22. Item number 22 is going to be House Bill 212 by Representative Clemens. We have a motion and a second. Sir, you're recognized. Brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is the Stop the Bleed bill that came before this committee last year and was moving through before the pandemic shut us down. This is a bill that is permissive, that allows LEAs and schools to install or put Stop the Bleed kits in classrooms or schools throughout the state of Tennessee. Some schools are already doing this, and they're raising funds through their PTOs, and this is brought to me by the Tennessee College of Trauma Surgeons and trauma surgeons from hospitals across the state of Tennessee, and the fiscal note's permissive.
Yep. Thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 212? Question's been called. Any objection calling the question? Seeing none, hearing none, we're now voting on moving House Bill 212 on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 212 moves on to full finance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, members, that brings us to item number 23. Item number 23 has been requested to be rolled 1 week. So without objection, House Bill 1066 rolled 1 week. All right, that brings us to item number 24. Item number 24 in your calendar is House Bill 18 by Representative Griffey. Sir, you're recognized. Do you have a motion and a second? Please continue with the brief description.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is House Bill 18. It is a constitutional carry bill. It differs from the governor's in a little bit as far as the age, and then the governor's has additional restrictions. It does have a fiscal note with it. It's my understanding the governor's bill 786 already has funds appropriate that would cover the cost of this bill. So I submit it to the committee for any questions or.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 18? Seeing none, as the sponsor has already alluded to, it does have a cost associated with House Bill 18, so we will have to place it behind the budget at this time and consider it at a later date. So you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would it, it's my understanding, I had some discussions with Leader Lamberts and others, that if the governor's bill already has funds covered and this bill would not incur any new cost, and the cost of this bill would be included within the budget that's already been proposed, wouldn't it be appropriate to perhaps move this forward to full
Sir, my
finance?
understanding is that particular funding is for that particular bill. So if that bill would go to the side, then that funding would be available, and then we could maybe have that discussion at that time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Okay,
that.
but
Thank
until then, without objection, House Bill 18 will go behind the budget. Thank you. All right, members, that brings us to item number 25, and I was a little bit confused there for a second. I looked down and saw the sponsor and thought I didn't know I had this bill, but lo and behold, there's Representative Hicks of Washington. So, sir, you're recognized on House Bill 626. Members, that's item number 25. You have a motion to second. You have the floor for a brief description, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Pregnant women and/or women with small children have many barriers to obtaining treatment from addiction, such as lack of treatment facilities, lack of child care, lack of transportation, and lack of funding. House Bill 626 is really about making government work better for our citizens who needs it the most. House Bill 626 requires our departments of mental health, substance abuse departments, health services, child services, the health department, and the Bureau of Teen Care to actively seek and apply for federal, private, and other available funds and actively direct state funds for development of recovery. This bill also assures that these entities will cooperate wraparound services for pregnant women and women with small children seeking treatment from addiction.
All right, thank you, Representative Hicks. Members, any discussion on House Bill 626? Chairlady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Not on the bill, but I feel it only fair since the other Hicks got a compliment on his hair that we tell this Representative Hicks, your hair looks nice too.
Thank you, Chairlady, and I do concur with that.
Thank you,
Any
Chairlady.
further discussion on House Bill 626 for the other Representative Hicks? Seeing none, we're now voting on sending House Bill 626 on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 626 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Chairman.
sir.
Thank you,
Thank
committee.
you. All right, members, that brings us to item number 26 on our calendar, which is House Bill 713 by Representative Hurt. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized for a brief description on House Bill 713.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not sure on the status on these amendments. Are we good?
You are good to go. They are ready.
Thank you, sir. House Bill 713 addresses BEP funding following students that, because of a student's treatment plan from a qualified physician, are sent to an out-of-state facility. It allows the facility to receive BEP funding for educational services provided during behavioral treatment. These facilities' educational programs will be qualified by the Department of Education. With the amendment, it clarifies that only when all options in Tennessee are exhausted, then the BEP funds can follow the student. The fiscal note is to fund the personnel used to qualify the educational programs.
All right, members, thank you for that description. Representative, you've heard the description. Is there any discussion on House Bill 713? Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and thank you very much for bringing this piece of legislation. I notice we're talking about potentially going to out-of-state mental health facilities and funding this. In my mind, that opens up my eyes, and the need for in-state facilities. I know that historically we've been in the mood of closing facilities and working our way through this and other means. I think there may be a day and time to continue the conversation for long-term residential treatment in this arena. I've said it every time I get an opportunity to, and I'll continue to say it. I think we have some opportunities and obligations in the state of Tennessee to have those sites inside our state. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Thank you, Representative Hawk. Well said. Members, further discussion on House Bill 713. Seeing none, Representative, there is a cost associated with House Bill 713. So without objection, it will have to be placed behind the budget and considered at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 713 will go behind the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Members, item number 27 on your calendar is going to be House Bill 339 by Representative Jernigan. Sir, you have a motion and a second. Please continue the brief description.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, Ryman Hospitality owns the Wild Horse Saloon, General Jackson Showboat, and Gaylord Springs Links that are in mine and Representative Beck's district. He has signed on to this. It's under a management agreement, these properties with Marriott International. So this bill does three things. It adds management agreement along with the owner and licensee when issuing a liquor license franchise. It also clarifies that the Wild Horse Saloon will have a higher restaurant fee. And last, it allows the General Jackson Showboat to be able to serve alcohol at the dock before loading. That's the brief description, and I would ask for any questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Representative Jernigan. Members, any discussion on House Bill 339? Questions have been called. Any objection to call the question? Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 339, moving to full finance. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 339 moves to full finance.
Chairman, members, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 28 on our calendar is House Bill 340 by Representative Lamar. Here she comes. You have a motion and a second. Representative Lamar, you have a motion and a second. You're recognized on House Bill 340 for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, committee. House Bill 340 is a bill that will require audio or visual recording of juveniles when they're being interrogated by law enforcement. I had the privilege to work closely with TBI and law enforcement associations to put this bill together to add transparency for both law enforcement and those who are going through interrogation. And that is a description of my bill.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 340? Seeing Leader Camper.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill. I think this would be great, you know, when our children, families are dealing with issues like that, to have that transparency. And I appreciate you working with, you know, law enforcement and bringing people together to make sure that everybody's in agreement with what you're trying to do. So thank you for bringing this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Thank
Leader.
you, Leader Camper. Representative, any further discussion? Seeing that, Representative Lamar, thank you for bringing this. The bill does have a fiscal note, so we will have to place it behind the budget to be reconsidered at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 340 will go behind the budget. Members, that brings us to item number 29. Item number 29 is House Bill 761. There has been a request to roll this 1 week. So without objection, House Bill 761 will be rolled 1 week. Brings us to item number 30. Item number 30 in your calendar is House Bill 1031 by Representative Thompson. There's also been a request to roll this 1 week. So without objection, House Bill 1031 rolled 1 week. That brings us to item number 31 on your calendar. Item number 31 is HJR 98 by Representative Towns. Sir, you are recognized. I do have a motion and a second. Please continue with a brief description.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Mr. Chairman, members, here again, this bill, or resolution actually, went to the House floor last year, and we ran out of time on the Senate side. We didn't get it passed, so we're back. And what it basically is self-explanatory as it seeks to, you know, rectify what I think is an error in the Constitution as it relates to the 13th Amendment. And simply say under no circumstances does slavery exist in the state. And as we did with an amendment, it does not affect or impact anybody's ability to be required to work while they're incarcerated. And essentially, that's what it does, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Thank you, Representative Towns. Any discussion on SJR 98? Seeing none, sir, there is a cost associated with HJR 98 that we will have to work through. So without objection, we will place HJR 98 behind the budget. Thank you, sir. Members, that brings us to item number 32 on our calendar. Item number 32 is House Bill 1172 by Representative Bond. Sir, you're recognized. You do have a motion and a second. Please continue the brief description.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. The 2006 County Powers Relief Act currently gives fast-growing counties the ability to charge a $1 per square foot adequate facilities tax to help fund new schools and education capital projects. This bill advances in time when that tax is paid. Under this bill, half of the tax would be paid when the permit is pulled and the other half at certificate of occupancy. Otherwise, currently, the tax is paid in full at the following date. It's the earlier of two dates. It's either 1 year after the permit is pulled or at the transfer of title.
All right, thank you for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 1172? Seeing none, we are now voting on moving House Bill 1172 on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1172 moves to full finance. All right, that brings us to item number 33 on our calendar. Item number 33 is House Bill 674 by Representative Freeman. Sir, you are recognized. We have a motion and a second. There you are. Couldn't find you. Go right ahead.
Sorry. These make it difficult to see sometimes. Thank you, Chairman. House Bill 674 creates a new liquor by the drink license called a food hall for the Assembly Food Hall at 5th and Broad in downtown Nashville. It's in Representative Beck's district. He has signed on to this bill. It's more than 110,000 square feet spread over multiple levels, featuring 20 plus vendors, numerous bars, outdoor terraces, live music. Worked extensively with the ABC to get this right, and we believe this is the best way to handle this. It would allow the eateries to operate under one main license, allow people to carry beverages freely from multiple venues, and then creates a process for the ABC to approve and regulate the individual eateries. And with that, I ask for your approval.
All right, thank you very much for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 674? Seeing none, hearing none, we are now voting on moving House Bill 674 on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 674 moves to full finance. Item number 34 on our calendar is House Bill 513 by Leader Gant. Sir, you are recognized. You have
Thank
a motion.
Mr.
and a
Chairman
second.
and
Please
committee.
continue.
I'll summarize on this bill because it is quite lengthy for time's sake. What this bill does is it enhances and creates penalties for certain intentional and knowing reckless obstruction of highway offenses, creates Class E felony for the offense of throwing an object at another causing bodily injury, creates a Class A misdemeanor offense of throwing an object at another with the intent of harming the other person, and also intentionally intimidating or harassing an individual present at a place accessible to the public, and it's creating a Class A misdemeanor for that as well. And obviously, we're in finance, and there are a lot of incarceration costs to this, and that is that's what brings us to the $335,000 incarceration cost. If there's any questions around the fiscal impact or anything else about the bill, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Leader Gant. Members, any discussion on House Bill 513? Seeing none, House Bill 513, sir, does have a cost associated with it, so we will have to place it behind the budget and consider it at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 513 will go behind the budget. Item number 35 on your calendar is also by Leader Gant, House Bill 517. Sir, you're recognized. You do have a motion second. Please continue with a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this bill does is under present law, the Chickasaw Basin Authority applies to Shelby and Tipton counties. This bill extends authorization to participate in the authority's program to all counties in the drainage area of the Wolf and Loosahachie Rivers and Nonconnah and Horn Lake Creeks. A county's legislative body must pass a resolution to be approved by the authority's Board of Commissioners before being permitted to participate in the authority's programs. And this was brought to me by my county mayor of Fayette, and this is just bringing clarity to that situation for Fayette County.
All right, thank you very much. Question has been called, but let's make sure. Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, we are now voting on House Bill 517, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 517 moves to full finance. All right, That brings us to item number 36. Item number 36 on our calendar is House Bill 776, also by Leader Gant. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. What this bill does is it's around the excise tax deduction for COVID-19 relief payments. And currently, the business relief payments issued by the state using coronavirus relief or other CARES Act funds may be treated as taxable income by the federal government. In general, federal taxable income serves as the starting point for determining a business excise tax liability in Tennessee. This bill states any amount received between March 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2021 through programs funded by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security known as the CARES Act, including an extension or modification or funded by appropriations under other federal law, would be exempt from the F&E tax.
All right, thank you very much. And Leader Gant, I think there's an amendment which you just described. Let's get that amendment on. It's 004919, is that
That's
correct? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the amendment as you heard described? Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on the amendment. We're now voting on amendment 004919 moving or to House Bill 776. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. We're back on House Bill 776 as amended, and you heard the description. Any discussion for House Bill 776 as amended? Seeing none. Question's been called. Objection called on the question. Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on moving House Bill 776 on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 776 moves to full finance. Item number 37 on your calendar is also by Leader Gant. It's House Bill 780. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It has an amendment. You want me to talk about the amendment?
We have a motion, a second, and the amendment is actually traveling, so it is in the proper posture, so you can go ahead and describe if you want to, as is.
Okay. The amendment does three things. It adds reporting requirement when Commerce and Insurance spends funds in extraordinary circumstances as allowed in this bill. It adds language regarding confirmation of mail notification. This was done on behalf of conversations with home builders. They felt it was important to specify return receipt level of mail so the department could demonstrate it did in fact issue a penalty citation. And that's the gist of the amendment. And it's okay to talk about did you say it was traveling?
It is traveling with it, yes.
Okay. This bill updates several procedures within the Department of Commerce and Insurance Division regulatory boards. These updates include modernizing the way boards or programs and licensees communicate with one another, updating licensing fee structures or removing them altogether, decreasing certain age requirements, and lowering apprenticeship hours. This bill also makes updates to the Real Estate Commission's Education Recovery Account by simplifying requirements to access the funds. And, Mr. Chairman, the Deputy Commissioner Toby Compton has asked to address the committee at the committee's request. That's up to you. I'm yielding to you on that. So,
Let me ask the members. Members, do you want to go out of session to hear from the speaker? It's okay. So there is a request to do that. So let's go without objection out of session. And sir, if you would, please come up to the podium and identify yourself. Let us know who you are.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Toby Compton, the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Commerce and Insurance. We're excited about this piece of legislation. For the sake of legislative intent, I wanted to speak to the reserve funds that are included in this piece of legislation. The reserve funds are they are funded completely from the fees associated with professional licensure. Almost all of our programs have a very healthy reserve fund, but unfortunately the department can't access the reserve funds very easily. So we're expanding the ability to do so in this legislation. We have no intent whatsoever to spend down to zero. That's not what we're trying to do here, nor would we do any spending that would put self-sufficiency in jeopardy related to any of the program areas. What it allows us to do is to invest in technology, use the funds for some legal fees, or to do things associated with our strategic plan for the department, such as like a PSA campaign in certain areas and things of that nature. We felt like it would be best to make sure that it was stated that we had no intent to spend to zero. That is not what we're trying to do.
All right, members, any discussion? Yes, Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that explanation. I was kind of concerned about that aspect of the bill because the boards of course, have to be self-sufficient, and that's why they charge a fee. And we're going to be, number one, reducing that fee in some instances and giving authority for you to use it for other things. And so my question around the use of the funds, if you take from a particular reserve, do you have to use it? Are we authorizing you to use it on issues pertaining to that board, or are you cross-contaminating, just using it to do stuff just across the board? How will we be able to see how you're using these funds, and are we authorizing you to just use them without that, in respect to that particular board?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You're absolutely right. So if we use the funds, those funds will be used specifically for the professions, the industries that are within that fund. We wouldn't just use it and park it in a different area. Any use of the funds requires our Commissioner, Carter Lawrence, to approve it, as well as the Commissioner of FNA, so that we would check, kind of check and balance there.
You're recognized, Leader Camper.
In your use of the funds and decision to use them and draw them down, have you set a minimum level at which you would, draw the funds down to?
I don't have that number in front of me. We're going to work with FNA to determine what that appropriate amount would be, like the minimum baseline amount, to figure that out. But it would be at least a year or two of the total operations for any particular program. That would give us a nice cushion just in case you have an off year where licensures would go down or other such things.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your answer. And Mr. Chairman, I have a question for.
Okay, we'll recognize you when we come back in session. Representative Lynn, I think you have a question.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you just expressed that there is a floor, a 2-year floor. It's always been the purpose of the licensure fee for a occupation or a profession, that the licensure fee simply pays the cost of licensing that group of people. So when you say you want to spend this for other purposes, will this be an ongoing thing, or is this a one-time thing until those funds are spent down to that floor that you have?
We would do it over time. It would not be, it could be a one-time thing in terms of maybe a PSA campaign around a certain topic would be a one-time type of expenditure. We would not be using these for just ongoing, regular routine things that we already fund.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your patience. I was trying to ask the leader about it, but maybe it is appropriate that I ask you. How many boards are we talking about here? Do you know about how many of them roughly?
There's 27, and within, many of the boards have multiple occupations within it. So for just a quick example would be the architects and engineers, but there's also landscape architects. And so there's many different professions, sometimes within one given board or commission.
And we're authorizing. It's okay.
You're recognized. Go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and we're authorizing you with this piece of legislation to do this within all of them, not just a finite number of boards. It would be across the board, all the boards.
All boards and commissions related to professional licensure, which is within the regulatory boards division.
Okay.
Not any of the other boards or agencies within the department.
Okay.
Recognized.
And lastly, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your patience. You said that you all are looking at what that floor might be. And so as this bill moves, when that information become available, would you make it available to the chairman that he can get it to us as it progresses to full?
Very gladly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, members, any further discussion for Mr. Compton? Seeing none, thank you very much. With that, we'll go back in session without objection. All right, members, we are back on House Bill 780. Is there any discussion for our sponsor? Seeing none, members, there is a cost associated with House Bill 780. So without objection, we will have to place it behind the budget. Without objection, House Bill 780 will go behind the budget. All right, members, that brings us to item number 38. Item number 38 on our calendars, House Bill 537 by Chairman Hawk. Sir, you're recognized. We do have a motion second. Please continue with a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. House Bill 537 is an effort that we've been working on for 5 or 6 years now. It is to improve the funding ratio of nurses in our public schools. Currently, nurses are funded at 1 nurse for every 3,000 students. The BEP formula aspect of this is well over 20 years old. It goes back to the origination of the BEP formula. Our student needs are greater than they ever have been in terms of medical needs. As we're looking at the needs within our schools, we've got needs for social work. We've got needs for psychological evaluations. Nurses will be able to provide a lot of assistance for our students as we go forward. I've given this anecdotal information before. I'll go visit with my 9-year-old and have lunch with her frequently when I'm back home, and invariably a little one will come in the school office and have the sniffles and need to see a nurse, and really all that little one needed was a hug, and they end up staying in school. This is a way to keep our kids in school, keep them learning, and help a lot of different areas. I know there's a fiscal impact to it. I'm hopeful that this committee, along with the governor's office and the Senate, can come together and come to some type of an agreement on a better ratio to get a medical professional inside each school. So in a nutshell, that's what this legislation does, Mr. Chairman and members.
All right, thank you, Chairman Hawk. Any discussion on House Bill 537? Seeing none, as the sponsor has alluded to, there is a cost associated with House Bill 537, so without objection, we will have to place it behind the budget. Without objection, House Bill 537 behind the budget. Members, that brings us to item number 39. Item number 39 on our calendars, House Bill 767 by Chairman Hawk. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and I would love to have gone in a different order to get this one passed first, to get the mojo going and possibly get a better outcome on the prior vote. House Bill 767 is an administration bill. I'll make a motion if we don't have.
You do have
Thank
the motion
you.
in a second. Please continue.
It is known as the Tennessee Insurance Modernization Act. This bill will ensure that Tennessee law stays current and consistent with international agreements and is not preempted by federal law. Additionally, this bill, the department seeks to update and expand Tennessee's captive insurance laws to authorize parametric insurance coverage and lower the initial capital requirements for captive cells. This bill eliminates any unnecessary filings from workers' compensation insurance carriers. It repeals an annual reporting requirement that has run its course. It eliminates the requirement that the commissioner be named as an agent for service or process for insurance division licensees. These changes in all will reduce business administration and make Tennessee a more attractive state to do business without impacting insurance consumer protections. That's a brief discussion, Mr. Chairman and members.
All right, thank you, Chairman Hawk. Members, any discussion on House Bill 767? Question's been called. Any objection to calling the question? Seeing none, hearing none, we're now voting on House Bill 767, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 767 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Chairman and members.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 40. Item number 40, there is a request to roll this bill 1 week. So without objection, House Bill 598 is rolled 1 week. And that brings us to item number 41 on our calendar. Item number 41 on our calendar is HJR 72 by Chairman Todd. Sir, you're recognized. You have a motion and a second. Please
Thank you, Mr.
continue with the
Chairman.
brief description.
This bill is actually a proposal for an amendment to the state constitution. We have a right to work in the state that has been around for almost 3/4 of a century, and this just enshrines it in the Constitution where it rightfully should be.
All right, thank you, Chairman, for that description. Members, any discussion on HJR 72? Seeing none, there is a cost associated with HJR 72, so we will have to place it behind the budget, consider it at a later date. So without objection, HJR 72 behind the budget. That brings us to item number 42 on our calendar. Item number 42 is House Bill 1218, which has been requested to be rolled 2 weeks. So without objection, House Bill 1218 rolled 2 weeks. Brings us to item number 43 on our calendar, which is House Bill 161 by Chairman Williams. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and members. House Bill 161,
you have a motion. Second, please continue.
We saw last year, 21 years ago, the city of Cookeville owned a hospital. It's a private act hospital called Cookeville Regional Medical Center. Inadvertently, the city employees that were on TCRS did not get transferred to the new private act hospital. What this bill establishes is the ability for them to transfer those assets and liabilities that should have transferred 21 years ago from the city of Cookeville to Cookeville Regional Medical Center. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Members, any discussion on House Bill 161? Seeing none, we are now voting on House Bill 161, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 161 moves to full finance. Brings us to item number 44. Item number 44 on our calendar is House Bill 977 by Chairman Williams. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, members. This, currently, county clerks are perfecting notes or liens on, for automobile dealers. Department of Revenue does that as well, but it's done more quickly at the local level. I recognize this as a fiscal note and good idea, but I'm happy to.
All right. You do have an motion and a second. I was waiting on that, so you do got it. And you heard the description of the sponsor. Members, any discussion on House Bill 977? Seeing none, as the sponsor alluded to, it does have a cost associated with it, so we will have to place it behind the budget, consider at a later date. Without objection, House Bill 977 goes behind the budget. Members, that brings us to the addendum calendar, item number 45. And with that said, I need to apologize to the sponsor because I overlooked you, or I would have gotten you out here much quicker. So I certainly owe you. I apologize. Members, item number 45 is House Bill 585 by Chairman Terry. Sir, you've got a motion and a second. Please continue with the description.
Thank you. What this bill does is it increases the charge from a Class A misdemeanor to a Class E felony for harassment of a first responder. It is obviously carries a fiscal note of $458,000, which proves that it is a problem and concern in the state of Tennessee.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 585. Any discussion on this piece of legislation? Seeing none, there is a cost associated with House Bill 585, and we will have to place it behind the budget. So without objection, House Bill 585 goes behind the budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right, members, I think that concludes our business for today. So without objection, we will be adjourned. Seeing none, we are adjourned.